Right.
You've still given us nothing except essentially Britishness, race and immigration. I mean, that's what your candidates will be drawn. You talked about Britishness.
Can I take issue with this? When did I mention race?
You said being British, not being foreign.
Sorry, that's not race. Let me be really clear. Do you think that's race? You think British is a race?
I think it acts as a kind of code word for yes, I do.
Okay,
but
well,
anyway.
Oh my God. Unbelievable. She can't bear the fact that people might want to be proud of their country and don't believe it is something to be forever ashamed of. This Guardian columnist has just exposed herself and the whole liberal worldview. They'll say anything to smear reform. I suppose she thinks Zia Yusuf is upholding white supremacy as well. If anything, when you listen to him talk about his own family story, it creates unity and togetherness in British people of all ethnic backgrounds. She's the one who is creating division and hate, especially among the majority white population. If people feel their identity and culture are under attack, which of course it is, it's only natural they become aggressively defensive and suspicious, which of course is what we are now seeing. It's the predictable outcome when people like her say that prioritising or celebrating anything British in Britain is racist. These liberals believe a British identity should be abandoned in favour of a one-size-fits-all global identity. And by global identity, they mean any identity over a British one. The liberal left also believes that to be in line with diversity and inclusion, being British can mean anything and everything. That means if someone from, let's say, Rwanda moves to Britain and brings their culture with them, we are forced to say that's just as British as anything British. To acknowledge a difference is to be racist. It only applies to Britain, though. Everyone else gets to celebrate their unique culture. They would never be expected to abandon their national identity in favour of a global one, or be told their culture means anything and everything. They are actively encouraged to celebrate their unique culture. All any of this is a deliberate attempt to render Britishness or Englishness meaningless. This video is Zia Yusuf versus the entire panel, as it always is with any Reform member who is invited onto the mainstream media. It's brilliant how he politely reminds the Guardian columnist he was in the middle of answering a question before she rudely interrupted him. He then goes on to explain Reform's other policies after they accuse him of having no policies on anything else other than mass immigration, as if that's not a big enough issue. Anyway, here's the full clip. Take a watch.
Well, my parents came here in the early 1980s from Sri Lanka. My father had recently qualified as a doctor. That was pretty much all that my parents had when they came to the country. They travelled all over the country to find work. My mum's a nurse, almost 70, still works in an intensive care ward. So between them, they've given half a century of service to our NHS. Nobody knows better than I the invaluable contribution immigrants can make to this country.
Right.
But if you look at the staggering numbers that have been allowed to come into the country in such a short period of time, our infrastructure is buckling under pressure, our health service is on the brink of collapse, young people cannot afford to get onto the housing ladder or even move out of their parents' home. This is a disaster in and of itself. We don't have enough prison space, so many people are too afraid now to walk outside.
So it is a one-issue party. You keep coming back to this. Have you got nothing else?
We've got many policies, but with respect, I was just answering the first question.
Right,
So
all right, but let me just interject, because you
strongly.
used to be a member of the Conservative Party.
Yes,
right. So when did you leave and decide that Reform UK was a better political home?
Well, I'd only ever voted Tory since I started voting. I felt extremely betrayed, like actually millions of people in the country, by Boris Johnson with his 80-seat majority, squandering the opportunity of Brexit. And frankly, I was pretty disconsolate about where the country was going until Nigel Farage said he was going to come back into the arena in politics and lead Reform UK.
What's your personal ambition?
My personal ambition is to make Nigel Farage the Prime Minister of this country.
Oh, do you want to be leader?
No.
Right. Why not?
Because I'm deadly focused on building this party into a national campaign-winning machine.
Analysis of Reform's candidate listings by the campaign organisation Hope Not Hate in May this year found that as many as 110 seats had seen their Reform UK candidates dropped or swapped since January 2024. How difficult is it going to be for you to find reputable candidates?
I wouldn't take anything hope not hate.
No, but just my answer to my question, because it is true that the figures are true, and during the general election campaign, Reform UK dropped 3 of its candidates following reports they had made offensive comments. Now, it happens in all parties, but on the basis of these figures, how will you find suitable candidates?
Well, look, we had some issues clearly in the general election. We don't make excuses for that. The reality is today, as we speak, we have 3,600 applicants to be Reform councillors for the English County Council elections next May, for which there are about 2,300 seats. So we have an amazing groundswell of great talent.
But will they be suitable on the basis of the figures that we saw? Now, what is it about Reform UK that is attracting people who aren't deemed suitable by yourselves?
We've been very clear, Nigel's been very clear about what this party stands for. It stands up for standing up for British people of all backgrounds, putting British people first and applying common sense to solve our problems. If you look at how we go forward from here, we've got thousands and thousands of applicants. We've got an in-house team who are sifting them, assessing these people. You're going to see an incredible roster. Just like, by the way, you look at our parliamentarians. There are 5 Reform MPs are doing a better job of standing up to Keir Starmer, providing real opposition, than all of the Tory MPs put together.
Right. You've still given us nothing except essentially Britishness, race and immigration. I mean, that's what your candidates will be drawn. You talked about
can
Britishness.
I take issue with this? When did I mention race?
You said being British, not being foreign.
Sorry, that's not race. Let me be really clear. Do you think that's race? You think British is a race?
I think it acts as a kind of code word for yes, I do.
Okay,
but
well,
anyway, that's what motivates your candidates, and that's why they get into trouble. You haven't given us anything yet. What else? What are you going to do about people's standard of living? To just keep batting on about your one theme is not going to get you into power.
So number 1, we eliminate income tax for people earning below £20,000 per year. Number 2, we scrap the net zero madness so energy bills start coming down. It'll pay for itself because you're going to get people back into work and the benefits costs come down.
The Institute for Fiscal Studies said that your manifesto plans just don't add up. I mean, you're a former investment banker. Obviously, you know your numbers and actually would cost more than it claims by tens of billions of pounds per year. They're not taking your manifesto seriously when it comes to the economy and figures. Why should we?
So their analysis assumed everything was going to be implemented on day 1, which is obviously not going to be the case. Obviously not going to be the case. A lot of the things we're doing is changing incentives. So yes, if you reduce the amount of people paying tax on incomes below £20,000, that in isolation has a cost. However, reducing the benefits bill and getting people back into the jobs market, creating
as we've discussed,
value
these
in the
things
economy,
aren't as easy. They're not as easy because lots of governments have tried it in the past. And in terms of raising that amount of money, you're talking about huge figures. But I'm also interested in what sort of economy you want to see. Are you in favour of a small state, low tax, a sort of Thatcherite policy?
We're in favour of common sense. So, for example...
But on those things, do you want to see a small state, lower taxes, you've said, a Thatcherite-style policy?
I think all of these binaries that people like to put on, the reality is what we need is common sense solutions. Let me give you some examples. We want to reduce the tax burden on hard-working British people. We want to promote individual responsibility. But, for example, with the utilities, where there are water companies paying their CEO tens of millions of pounds, being fined £100 million for polluting the water, and when you're a private citizen wanting to change, you can't. That's not competition. So these are oversimplifications. What we need is common sense policies that put British people first.
Right. Threat to Labour? I mean, they were a threat in a number of seats, of course, at the general election to both the Conservatives and, of course, to Labour.
We had the Reform vote absolutely rose in my seat, and it was a protest vote after 14 years of absolute shambles of government. People said to me, Duck, it's not about you, you're all the same, and I don't trust any of the main parties, so I'm going to go with Reform. And I said to them, we're not all the same. Send one of your own down to Westminster and let me be part of a Labour government that actually delivers for you. So when they see that this is serious government that is being honest about the challenges but optimistic about the future, they will see what we can deliver, and we will deliver in this decade of national renewal. They will see they don't have to have a protest vote anymore because the grown-ups are in charge and we are delivering for working people.
And we'll, of course, judge you on delivery. Matt Vickers, a big threat to the Conservative Party. They certainly were at the general election.
I think at the general election people sent us a message. We've got the message loud and clear, and now we're looking, well, as we speak, people are casting their ballots to decide what direction our party goes next. to elect a new leader. We've got commitments from Robert on a whole series of issues. Yesterday we heard what he was going to do about the economy. Before that we've heard about, well, a whole number of what he thought on public service reform. But one of the big issues that bothers a lot of people is around immigration.
All right.
We've got a commitment
You sound
from Robert.
you sound very like him, and so does he. So what's going to happen on your other side? All of the people you lost to the Liberal Democrats, all of the people you lost in the South, they're not going to come back to hear a kind of,
What, a reform light?
Kind of,
That's why you should be listening to everything Robert says, because he's talking about a lot more than immigration. But we have got a commitment to leave the ECHR because we know that's the way that we can take control of the borders. We can take control of who is and isn't allowed to stay in this country when they commit a crime. We have the opportunity.
Well, can I just
with a
ask
new
finally,
leader.
because we're almost out of time, and that's about judgment. Because after the Southport stabbing attack and the subsequent riots, Nigel Farage was accused of stoking conspiracy theories by questioning whether the truth is being withheld from us. And he told LBC there were stories online from some very prominent folks with big followings, Andrew Tate, etc. Andrew Tate, who, of course, is under house arrest in Romania for alleged human trafficking offences. What did that say about Nigel Farage's judgment?
There's this constant attempt to completely misinterpret, I think quite deliberately, what Nigel Farage has said. Since that interview...
That's the quote from LBC.
Well, exactly. So Nigel's security detail has had to be tripled in size, because people have been directly inciting violence against him.
Well, hang on, but answer my question about his judgment. Did he get caught up in online misinformation? Should he have shown a bit more restraint?
The opposite. What he was saying was leaving an information vacuum where the police and the Home Office sit on information quite deliberately when they could have put information out there to essentially quash a lot of these rumours. And by the way, you know the person who was actually responsible for starting the rumour that this was...
this is an ongoing case. I want to talk about the judgment of Nigel Farage to actually wade into a debate without the facts.
Relevant to that, because the person who was responsible for starting that rumour is now being charged for cyber terrorism in Pakistan. It doesn't fit the narrative, so people don't talk about it.
That's all we have time.